Imagine this. The year is 2005. Rupert Murdoch, one of the most powerful media moguls on the planet, opens his checkbook and writes down $580 million for a website, not an oil field, not a television network. A website where teenagers were posting glittery text and autoplay music on their profile pages. The entire tech industry called it the deal of the century. And for a moment, it genuinely looked like it was. Because MySpace was not just a website. It was the internet itself. Over 100 million active users every single month. Artists were launching careers on it. Teenagers were building social lives around it. It had already overtaken Google as the most visited website in the United States. Rupert Murdoch had just bought the future, or so everyone believed. What happened next is one of the most spectacular and instructive disasters in the entire history of technology. Within 7 years, that $580 million empire was sold for just $35 million, a loss of more than 94% of its value. The story of how MySpace rose to conquer the internet and then collapsed into almost nothing is not just a business story. It is a warning, a masterclass in how arrogance, wrong decisions, and the failure to listen to your own users can destroy even the most dominant platform on Earth. In 2003, Tom Anderson and Chris DeWolf launched MySpace from a small office in Santa Monica, California. The concept was simple but electric. Give every person on the internet their own personal page, not just a profile, but a living, breathing digital bedroom. Users could choose their own background, embed their favorite song so it played automatically when someone visited, writing custom fonts and colors, and list their top 8 friends in an order that carried enormous social weight for anyone in middle school or high school at the time. Musicians discovered that MySpace was the single greatest promotional tool ever invented. Arctic Monkeys, Lily Allen, and Soulja Boy all built their early fan bases directly on MySpace before they were signed to a single label. For bands, it was free marketing at a global scale. For users, it was community, identity, and self-expression rolled into one. By 2006, MySpace had done something that seemed impossible. It had overtaken Google as the most visited website in the entire United States. Think about that for a moment. Google, the search engine that already ran the world's information. MySpace beat it. At that moment, no rational person could have predicted what was coming. The platform was at the absolute peak of its power, its cultural influence, and its commercial value. And that is precisely when everything started to go wrong. When News Corporation acquired MySpace, the people running it changed. The original founders were slowly pushed aside as corporate executives who understood television and newspapers, but not the internet, began making decisions. The first catastrophic mistake was prioritizing advertising revenue over user experience. MySpace became cluttered with banner ads, pop-ups, and sponsored content that made the platform slow, ugly, and deeply frustrating to use. Every page load felt like wading through mud. Users started complaining loudly and consistently. Nobody in a position of power listened. The second mistake was refusing to address the platform's growing security problems. MySpace became notorious for spam accounts, phishing links, and malware hidden inside user-generated content. Parents were scared. Teenagers, the core audience that had built the platform, started feeling unsafe and unwelcome. The trust that had made MySpace great was quietly rotting from the inside, and the people in charge either did not notice or did not care. The third and most fatal mistake was a complete failure to adapt. While MySpace was busy selling ad space and ignoring its own product, a quiet revolution was happening just offstage. In 2004, a Harvard student named Mark Zuckerberg had launched a clean, fast, and simple social network called Facebook. No chaotic profile customization, no autoplay music, no spam, just a clear design, real names, and a focus on actual human connection. By 2008, Facebook had overtaken MySpace in global traffic. The shift happened with breathtaking speed. MySpace responded in the worst possible way, by copying Facebook's features instead of doubling down on what made MySpace unique in the first place. They removed the profile customization tools that loyal users loved. They redesigned the interface to look more like Facebook. In doing so, they gave their remaining users no reason to stay, and no reason that was better than simply switching to Facebook entirely. It was not a pivot. It was surrender dressed up as strategy. Tom Anderson, the original founder and the man whose smiling face was a default friend of every single new MySpace account, known simply as Tom, was completely removed from any meaningful role in the company. The engineers who had built the platform from nothing were replaced by corporate hires who understood quarterly earnings reports but had no passion for the product. The soul of MySpace was gone long before the users were. By 2009, MySpace was already in freefall. Layoffs began. The user base was collapsing month after month. Advertisers were leaving for platforms where the audience was still paying attention. News Corporation, which had paid $580 million at the absolute peak of MySpace's power, now desperately and publicly wanted out. In 2011, they sold MySpace to an advertising company called Specific Media for just $35 million. Justin Timberlake, yes, the musician, was part of the buying group and briefly tried to relaunch MySpace as a music-focused platform. The redesign was actually beautiful and thoughtful, but it was too late. The users were gone. The culture was gone. The moment had passed, and no amount of good design could bring it back. Today, MySpace still technically exists as a minor music discovery platform with a fraction of its former users. The data from its peak years, the hundreds of millions of photographs, songs, messages, and personal profiles that represented an irreplaceable archive of early internet culture, was largely destroyed in a server migration in 2019. An entire era of the internet simply gone. The collapse of MySpace is not really a story about Facebook being better. Facebook was better, but only because MySpace stopped caring about being good. The lesson is devastating in its simplicity. The moment you stop listening to the people using your product, you have already begun to lose them. MySpace had everything: the users, the culture, the momentum, the money, and the first mover advantage that most startups can only dream of. What it did not have was humility. It did not have leaders who understood that a social platform is fundamentally different from a television network. You cannot broadcast at your audience. You have to serve them. The second you treat your users as inventory to be monetized rather than people to be genuinely valued, you have already written your own ending. $580 million became $35 million. A dynasty became a footnote. And somewhere in a server room, the digital memories of 100 million people quietly disappeared into nothing. The internet does not forgive, and it never forgets who failed to respect it.